The wind cut through the mountain pass like a blade. Snow whipped my face, stinging through the thin scarf I'd wrapped around my neck. Every step I took made a hollow crunch against the frozen ground. My boots were wet, my fingers numb, but I didn't slow. Something had drawn me here, something crying in the cold. I rounded a jagged cliff and froze. A small cave yawned against the rock, and inside, a pair of glowing amber eyes blinked weakly at me. My stomach tightened. I crouched, trying not to scare them, and saw the truth. A mother wolf lay on her side, one leg twisted unnaturally. Beside her, 3 pups huddled together, shivering, barely moving. Frost clung to their fur. Their breaths came in soft, pitiful puffs. I swallowed hard. Hey, it's okay," I whispered, though I wasn't sure they understood. My hand shook as I reached for the small satchel on my shoulder. Inside were scraps of dried meat and a bit of hard bread. Slowly, I knelt and placed it near the mother wolf. She sniffed, her teeth bared weakly, but she didn't attack. The pups crawled closer, tiny bodies trembling. I wrapped a threadbare blanket around them, my hands cold, but steady. The wind outside roared. I could hear it whipping over the cliffs, carrying the faint sound of distant predator howls. A pang of fear ran through me. If I lingered too long, I'd be trapped out here, and so would they. But I couldn't leave. Not like this. Not now. I lifted the mother wolf carefully, murmuring words I hoped were soothing. The pups clung to me, as if they sensed I meant them no harm. My heart pounded, not from the cold, but from the raw weight of responsibility. Every step back toward my cabin was slow, deliberate. The snow was deep, and each gust made me question if I'd made a mistake, if survival itself would punish my mercy. But then I looked down at those small amber eyes, so full of trust despite the pain, and I knew I couldn't turn away. This was more than survival. This was a choice, one that would change both their lives and mine forever. The snow whipped past the cabin windows, drumming a relentless rhythm that matched the pounding of my heart. I set the wolves down on the creaking wooden floor, the smell of damp pine and smoke filling the small room. Their eyes darted nervously, for bristling. I could hear the low growl that warned me to keep my distance. "It's okay," I whispered, though I knew my words were meaningless to them. I just needed them to trust me, even a little. The cabin was cramped. My bed took up one corner, a small wood stove clattered in the other. There wasn't much room for me, let alone 3 wild animals who had never seen a human as anything but a threat. Yet here they were, huddled together, trembling. I moved slowly, keeping my hands visible, my voice soft. One of the pups tried to approach, ears back, tail low. I knelt and held out a handful of scraps I had managed to save for my pack. The tiny animal froze, sniffed the air, and then cautiously nibbled. A small victory, but a victory nonetheless. I built a small pen near the stove, little more than a makeshift barrier, but enough for them to feel some safety. Each wolf took turns inspecting me, nostrils flaring, claws scraping the floor. I met their gaze without blinking, willing them to understand I meant no harm. Outside, the storm raged. Snow piled against the walls, ice forming along the roof. Any misstep could leave all of us trapped. My mind raced with calculations, food, warmth, keeping them calm. But I couldn't let fear win, not tonight. Hours passed, and gradually the growls softened into tentative whines. One of the adults stepped closer, nose twitching, eyes wary but unafraid. I held my breath, letting the silence stretch, until finally it brushed against my arm. I didn't flinch. I simply exhaled, letting the tension of the world drain from my shoulders. I realized then that trust wasn't given freely. It was earned, slowly, with patience and quiet determination. I tended the fire, fed the pups again, and watched them curl up together. The wind howled outside, a reminder of the danger waiting beyond the cabin. But inside, a fragile bond had begun to form, a silent agreement between human and wolves, survival and compassion intertwining. I knew this trust would be tested, that the mountains would challenge us both. But for now, the storm could rage. We had each other. The fire crackled, casting long shadows across the cabin walls. I watched the wolf pups curl closer to their injured mother, her breathing ragged but steady. Each flicker of the flames reminded me of the winters I had endured alone, the nights when the wind cut through every crack, and the snow pressed against my thin walls like it wanted to bury me alive. I ran my fingers over the rough wood table and thought of my own family, gone years ago in a blizzard so fierce it seemed like the mountains themselves had decided I wasn't meant to survive. "I know what it feels like," I whispered, kneeling beside the pups, "to have nothing and still try to fight." They tilted their heads, ears twitching, as if understanding. The adult wolf's amber eyes met mine, wary but trusting, and for the first time, I felt the weight of someone, or something, counting on me. The fragile bond formed in that small, smoky cabin was heavier than any burden I had carried before. I moved carefully, offering scraps of dried meat. The pups hesitated, sniffing the air. I spoke softly, telling them about the town I had left behind, the men who had promised help and then turned their backs, the women who whispered lies and watched me struggle. "People can be cruel," I said, "but survival teaches you patience, teaches you strength." One pup nuzzled my hand, and I swallowed a lump in my throat. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed touch, missed connection. The wolves didn't judge. They only waited, breathed, and lived. As I searched the den for more supplies, something caught my eye beneath a pile of frostbitten leaves, a small, tarnished pendant tangled in a branch. I picked it up, brushing off the dirt, and saw initials etched faintly on the silver. I remembered the stories of men who had disappeared in these mountains, gold and secrets hidden beneath stone. A shiver ran down my spine. The pendant was more than a trinket. It was a message from a world I had tried to leave behind. Something human had intersected with the wilderness, and it demanded attention. I sat back on my heels, holding the pendant to the firelight. "You see," I whispered to the wolf family, "even in the cold, even when it seems like nothing survives, there are secrets waiting. There's hope." One of the pups crept closer, brushing its head against my knee. The mother wolf stepped forward, limping slightly but steady, her eyes softening. In that moment, I realized our lives were intertwined, not by blood, but by trust, by shared struggle, by the quiet knowledge that survival was a gift, and it could be given and received. I recounted more of my story to them, how I had learned to track game, to read the mountain winds, to live on courage alone. I told them about the betrayals in the town below, how neighbors had stolen what little I had, and how I had fought to reclaim myself. The wolves listened in their way. They padded closer, their warmth a living answer. The cabin, once a hollow refuge, now felt like a home where scars could be tended and strength renewed. The pendant lay between us like a promise that even amidst pain, secrets could reveal paths to healing and redemption. Hours passed, the storm outside pressing against the cabin, but inside we formed a rhythm. I fed, I tended, I whispered. They nuzzled, they observed, they trusted. In that quiet, smoky glow, I understood that survival wasn't just living. It was connection, courage, and the ability to heal together. The wolves had been dying, but they were reborn through my hands, and in their eyes, I saw a reflection of the woman I had become. Strong, wary, but willing to trust. And in that moment, the mountain didn't feel so lonely anymore. Snow drifts pressed against the cabin walls like silent witnesses. I could hear it in the timber, the soft creak of boards bending under frost, the whisper of wind carrying something else. Hoofbeats, light but deliberate. My chest tightened. Someone, or something, was moving outside. "Stay close," I murmured, not to anyone but to the wolves. They were huddled near the fire, ears twitching, noses quivering. Their trust in me had grown, but this was different. The way the snow gave under footsteps told a story of purpose. Hunters, poachers. I didn't know, but the danger was near. My hand rested on the rifle propped against the wall. Cold iron comfort in a warmer chaos. I pressed my back to the cabin wall, peering through the narrow window slit. Shadows moved along the ridge, a group of figures crossing the white expanse. Their voices were low, gruff whispers carried by the wind. One of them barked orders, the others obeyed, unaware that we were watching. I counted them, 3, maybe 4, but it didn't matter. They wanted the wolves. They wanted the secret hidden in the mountains, and I wasn't about to let them take either. The wolves growled softly, a warning, a question. I whispered back, I won't let them hurt you. Each beat of their hearts matched mine. I scanned the slope again. A snapping branch, too loud for snow alone. My pulse thudded. My mind raced through contingencies, escape routes, barricades, traps I could set, every twig and stone a potential advantage. And then came the decision. I would not run. I would not hide. They would find us ready. But first, I needed to test the boundary, assert the line. Go back, I whispered under my breath, or face what you don't understand. Outside, a shadow froze. The wolves tensed. I could feel it, the first crack of tension, the mountain acknowledging the intruders. Survival was not just instinct anymore, it was a choice. And we were ready to make it. Snow whipped against the cabin walls as I hauled logs from the nearby ridge. Each beam felt heavier than the last, but my hands didn't tremble. I had survived worse winters, and I would survive this one too. I nailed planks over the windows and stacked stones around the fire pit. The wolves padded close, sniffing the fresh scent of pine and blood in the wood. Their eyes were sharp, alert. They sensed danger I could not yet see. I could hear the faint scrape of hooves in the distance. Hunters, or worse. The wind carried whispers across the ridge, and I knew the mountains were watching me. I moved silently, covering my tracks in the snow, while the wolves circled the perimeter. One of the pups barked softly, and I nodded. They had learned to read me as much as I had learned to read them. Together, we were no longer separate, human and wild, heart and instinct, moving as one. Inside the cabin, I emptied my pack, spreading dried meat and berries into a small supply cache. Every morsel counted. I tied bundles of herbs to the rafters, filling the air with a pungent smoke that would mask my scent. The wolves sniffed, tilting their heads, approving, or at least tolerating my strange human rituals. I checked my weapons, dusting snow off my rifle, oiling the hinges of my pistols. This was no ordinary winter survival. Something dark was creeping across the peaks, and I could feel it in my bones. Outside again, I built a rudimentary trap along the ridge, a snare hidden beneath fresh powder. The wolves watched, crouched low, their eyes scanning the snow-laden treeline. I gestured to one, and it slinked forward, pressing its nose to the ground, following a scent only it could detect. They were my eyes and ears, my silent partners in a world that had little mercy. I whispered, "If anyone comes, you warn me first." Its tail twitched. I trusted it more than any man in the valleys below. Hours passed. I reinforced the cabin door with an extra latch, hung a lantern outside to flicker as a signal if someone came from the ridge. The storm began to ease, leaving jagged icicles glittering in the pale light. My breath came in sharp gusts, but the wolves padded beside me, not behind, not ahead. They were part of the same rhythm. The wind carried a distant howl from the valley, and the pups huddled close to me. I wrapped a spare blanket around them, and in that fragile warmth, I realized something. This was no longer just survival. It was unity. A small, strange family forged in frost, fear, and the quiet trust of eyes that had seen too much. I paused on the ridge, looking over the expanse of white wilderness. The mountains waited. The hunters waited. And I waited too, but not helpless. The wolves shifted at my side, and I felt their strength, their instinct, their courage flowing into me. Whatever came, we would meet it together. That cabin, those creatures, the winter, it was our domain now. And for the first time in weeks, I allowed a faint smile. We were ready. The wind howled like 1,000 restless spirits outside my cabin. Snowflakes whipped against the rough-hewn logs, cutting my skin with every breath I took. I could hear them before I saw them, hoofbeats muffled by the storm, voices sharp and cruel as metal. Hunters. They had found us. My heart slammed against my ribs, and the wolves stirred, ears twitching, low growls rumbling from their throats. I knew that sound. They trusted me enough to fight. I grabbed my rifle, checking the lock. The wolves circled, alert and coiled like springs, shadows in the lantern light. "Stay close," I whispered. Their amber eyes met mine, fierce and unwavering. I could feel the cabin shudder as the first snow-laden branch splintered under their weight. A shadow moved outside, and the hunters shouted, calling names I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The first shot cracked through the storm. Snow sprayed across the window panes, and my shoulder jerked as I took aim. One of them fell into the drift, his rifle clattering beside him. The wolves lunged, fangs bared, herding the intruders away from the cabin door. It was chaotic, the storm masking our movements, giving us an edge. I felt a wild grin break across my face. "Come on," I muttered. "If they want to fight, they'll get one." A second figure appeared, heavier, more confident. He carried a bag that rattled suspiciously. My pulse quickened. This wasn't just about the wolves. Something more valuable had drawn them here. I ducked behind the log wall and aimed, keeping my breathing slow. A third shot rang out, slicing the cold, and the bag tumbled from their hands. I sprinted, snow crunching, and kicked it back inside. The wolves circled the bundle, sniffing, teeth flashing. I lifted the corner of the tarp. Papers, old coins, and a map marked with a strange X. Their real prize, hidden in the mountain all along. The storm intensified, wind howling like a banshee, snow blinding our movements. One hunter tried to circle around the cabin, silent in the storm's cover. I heard the soft crunch of boots on powder, a whistle to signal the others. The wolves intercepted him, teeth sinking into leather, forcing him to retreat. I fired, aiming to wound, not kill, enough to protect the pack and our cabin. He went down with a grunt, and the remaining hunters hesitated. The wind carried my voice. "This is my home. Leave now, or don't leave at all." Their leader, taller, broader, stepped into the doorway, rifle raised. He snarled, voice thick with greed and hate. "That wolf pack isn't yours to keep," he spat. I met his gaze, feeling the weight of every storm-beaten winter behind me. "Neither is this cabin. Neither are the mountains. You forget who survives here," I said and fired. The bullet cracked through the storm, forcing him behind cover. The wolves moved like lightning, flanking, snapping, making the remaining hunters reconsider. Minutes stretched like hours. Snow and blood mixed in the drifts outside, a tableau of chaos and courage. One by one, the hunters fled, retreating into the white wasteland, defeated by wind, snow, and a stubborn woman and her wolves. I breathed, shoulders trembling, and knelt beside the injured wolf pup. "We did it," I whispered, voice barely audible over the storm. The bundle lay safe, secrets kept. The mountains had tested us, and we had survived. Justice, in the frontier, was never quiet, but it was ours tonight. Outside, the snow softened, and the first gray light of dawn crept across the peaks. I watched the wolves move freely among the drifts, tails high, eyes bright. The hunters would not return. Not for us. Not for the treasures hidden in the heart of the mountain. We had defended life, trust, and the fragile bonds forged in snow and fear. That cabin had been our fortress, the wolves our family, and the mountains themselves had whispered their approval. The storm was over, but the story, and its lessons, would echo forever. The first light of dawn spilled over the peaks, painting the snow in soft golds and pinks. I stepped outside, my breath curling in the crisp mountain air, and watched the wolves I had saved moving freely, tails high, bodies strong. They circled one another, playful, yet wary, a perfect balance of wild and trust. My heart thumped in my chest, a quiet pride mixing with relief. The cabin behind me looked different now. The repairs I had made the night before held, the roof patched, the hearth glowing faintly, smoke spiraling upward like a promise kept. I ran a hand over the wood walls and felt a strange comfort. This place, once cold and empty, was now home, not lonely, but filled with life, with purpose. I cut the rope I had used to secure the wolves, letting them roam farther than ever before. I left small piles of food near the tree line, watching as they hesitated and then disappeared into the forest. The wind carried their howls back to me, a chorus of survival and freedom. I exhaled, thinking of everything this journey had taught me. Courage, trust, and the bonds that can form between unlikely companions. Harmony with nature, justice earned, and a family chosen. not given, stretched across the quiet mountains. I watched the first rays of sunlight spill across the snow-capped peaks. The wolves, my companions through storm and shadow, slipped silently into the forest. Their trust, their quiet courage, reminds me that survival doesn't always roar. It sometimes whispers, soft and steady, in the frostbitten wind. I think of the choices we make when no one is watching, the acts of compassion that carry more weight than any gun or bounty. Out here in the wild, justice is earned through patience, loyalty, and courage, not words on paper. What would you have done if you stumbled upon life hanging by a thread, with dangers circling like wolves? If this story spoke to you, linger a moment, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and honor those who carry truth and courage through storms we may never see.